Hey folks, it's Rob, and welcome back. We're continuing our series on the Monstrous Compendium Appendix for the Mystara setting from 1994 from TSR. Today's item will be a two-pager on the familiar. Now, this is not, unfortunately, on a two-page spread. This is on front and back of a page, very helpfully. Um, the Now, when you say familiar, you might be thinking like the find familiar spell, where you can get a toad or a cat or something for maybe an imp for your magic user character. That is not strictly what this is about. Um, so just to get that out in front, we're not talking about any old regular wizard familiar, okay, for a magic user. Um, Even though it says familiar, right? And we have a depiction of various types here on the second page, so I'll just have that up for a moment. But the these are more like immortal avatars, but like minor versions. Um, so before I get to the actual stat block for a change, we're going to read the first paragraph here of the text description so you have an idea what we're getting into and what this might be about. Because I know for a fact the first time I saw this, I'm thinking, oh, like wizard familiars. Like, these are just unusual, weird ones for the setting. No, no, they are not. I mean, kinda, but they are not. So, although the unique familiars of Mystara look like tiny humanoid creatures, these are actually the normal forms immortals take when they visit the prime material plane on special missions or to perform acts of penance. As a familiar, the immortal serves a mortal master, a wizard of similar alignment. Note that text in this entry refers only to the 5 special familiars listed here, not to regular wizard familiars. So, as much as you might want one of these, you probably can't have one for your mage, right? Um, they're more NPC familiars, right? Maybe you'll encounter one with your party, but they're not for your use with find familiar spell. Just forget about it, okay? Um, we have 5 flavors. We have the Aryth, the Bogan, the Fylgar, the Gretch, and the Ulzaq. Some of you might be thinking, oh, like the Bogan, Gretch, those are like fey creatures, right? Yeah, those are names I've certainly heard for that, but that is not what this is. So, let's get through the stat block so we can get into the bulk of this. Aryth, climate any. They're all going to be climate any. Uh, Frequency, very rare. They're all going to be very rare. They're all going to be solitary, right? The Aryth has a day cycle. The Bogan has an any cycle. The Fylgar and the Gretch have a day cycle, and the Ulzaq has a night cycle. They're all omnivores. The Aryth has a high intelligence, 13. The Bogan an 11, very intelligent. Fylgar is also 11 and very. Gretch is also very, but 12. And the Ulzaq has a low 6 intelligence. They all have treasure type Q. Uh, the Aryth can be any good alignment. The Bogan can be any evil alignment. The Fylgar can be any lawful environment. The Gretch can be any neutral environment. And the Ulzaq can be any chaotic environment alignment. And that comes back to that prototypical kind of 5-point alignment system instead of the 9-point like they have in the second edition. Because the neutral is the only one that can be neutral. But it is any neutral, and again, it feeds into the 9-point system here. But you know, I suppose any chaotic or any lawful could also be neutral. Any good and any evil could be a neutral good or a neutral evil. But it just kind of reminds me of old stuff. But you don't need my pointless diversion here. Number appearing will always be 1. Oddly enough, what with them being solitary. Armor class is 0 across the board. Movement for the Aryth is 9 on the ground, but flying 18 with a maneuverability class of B. The Bogan is 12 on the ground and flies at 30 with an A maneuverability. The Fylgar is 6 on the ground, but flight is 24 with an A maneuverability. The Gretch is 15 on the ground, flying is 18 with a C maneuverability, and the Ulzaq just moves slowly at 6 on the ground. Hit dice is 3 across the board. To hit AC 0 is 17 across the board. They all get 1 attack except for the Ulzaq, which has 3 or 1. The Aryth has a D4 tail attack. The Bogan has a D4 bite or a D3 tail. The Fylgar has a D4 bite or a D4 tail. The Gretch has a D4 bite or a D4 tail. And the Ulzaq gets 1d2 claw, 1d2 claw, 1d4 bite, or just a d4 bite. The Aryth has a special attack of sleep. The Bogan gets a special attack of charm and poison. The Fylgar does not have a special attack. The Gretch has a dexterity drain and slow attack. The Ulzaq has a strength drain and confusion attack. Special defenses. Again, this is right across here. +1 or better weapon to hit, regeneration, invisibility, immune to cold and fire, also see below. But they don't have any magic resistance. They are tiny, but the Aryth and the Bogan are 1 foot tall, while the Fylgar, the Gretch, and the Ulzaq are 2 feet tall. The Aryth has a morale steady at 11. Bogan is average at 10. The Fylgar is elite at 13. The Gretch is also steady at 11, and the Ulzaq is average at 10. The experience value for defeating one of these, an Aryth is 2,000 and the Bogan is 2,000, but the Fylgar is only 975, while the Gretch is 1,400 and the Ulzaq brings us back to 2,000 again. Now, I did read that first paragraph from the text. We have finished the stat block finally, and we're ready to proceed, but, the interesting set of stats, they're certainly defeatable by a party as long as they have +1 or better weapons or they have plenty of damaging spells available, because, 3 hit dice isn't that much, but they do regenerate to a certain degree, which I'm certain is described in the text down here. And, they're immune to certain damage types like cold and fire, and they have further immunities in the text, which we'll get into. I imagine they're immune to like charm and sleep. So, moving past that initial statement about actually, let's reread it because it's quite important. Although the unique familiars of Mystara look like tiny humanoid creatures, these are actually the normal forms of immortals take when they visit the prime material plane, that is, the regular universe, on special missions or to perform acts of penance. As a familiar, the immortal serves a mortal master, a wizard of similar alignment. Note that text in this entry refers only to 5 special familiars listed here, not to regular wizard familiars. The 5 types of familiar correspond to the 5 spheres of the immortals. Each of these spheres corresponds roughly to a particular alignment. The chart below shows a familiar type that represents each sphere/alignment. So the Ulzaq tends to be towards the energy sphere, and alignment chaos. The Bogan, entropy, and with evil. Fylgar, matter and law. Aryth, thought and good. And the Gretch, time and neutral. And each of those spheres also has generally like a class preference as well, but it's not limited. And entropy is not a player character sphere. It is NPC only. So, that's just to get in from what I know from the Immortals rules. So, reading onwards. Immortals do not follow these classifications exclusively. For example, an immortal of thought might choose to take a form of a Fylgar. As a familiar, then, it would possess connections to both law for Fylgars and good for its thought sphere, making it a Fylgar lawful good alignment. Okay. I mean, it could be any lawful, but therefore good. The tiny humanoids all have small wings and an assortment of powers, but each type of familiar boasts its own unique strengths, weaknesses, and physical features. While it remains a willing and magically bound servant, a familiar can communicate telepathically with its master for up to 1 mile. In addition, a master within that range can use all the familiar senses, including infravision, and gains a +3 bonus to all saving throws while in physical contact with it. So, like riding on its back, or hidden on its person, or on its shoulder, even. Combat. In battle, a familiar attacks with its tail and bite. The Ulzaq may use its claws as well. Damage varies with the type of familiar, and each type has special combat abilities. All familiars are immune to non-magical weapons as well as cold and fire-based attacks. They can become invisible, per the spell Invisibility, and can cast Detect Evil and Detect Magic at will. These creatures all have infravision with a 60-foot range. Each can regenerate 1 hit point of damage per round, as with the Regenerate spell, and pass this ability on to their masters no more than 10 feet away. Familiars all use their magical abilities as if they were 21st level wizards. If a familiar ever falls to 0 hit points, its body on the prime material plane is destroyed, and its life force returns to its home plane. The character whom the character served will not be granted another familiar for at least 1 year, and suffers the permanent loss of 1d4 plus 1 hit points due to the shattering of the mystic connection upon the familiar's death. And that might kill the magic user if you're combating both of these at the same time. But it definitely means that the wizard is aware that you've killed their familiar that's not with them, right? All those powers, there's no way the magic user would not know. Because they, A, share the senses, communicate telepathically if they're within 1 mile, and suffer damage when it dies due to that breaking of the mystical connection. So there's just, don't think that's the party might not realize, but the magic user will know. Habitat/society. The familiars of Mystara serve their masters out of either choice or duty, depending on the reason they were sent to the prime material plane. In most cases, a familiar allows a wizard to bind it into service with a Find Familiar spell. Unlike most such creatures, however, immortal familiars often choose their masters carefully, either searching out a wizard of the proper alignment who is trying to summon a familiar, or even presenting themselves to a chosen wizard and telling this character to cast the spell. A completed spell binds immortal familiars just as it would any other familiar. Certain high-level wizards have been known to bind an unwilling familiar to their service. Only a few know the exact method to perform such a binding. This very risky procedure involves long, dangerous, and costly magical operations and produces a weaker bond than if the candidate were willing. If such a familiar ever escapes its magical bindings, it will focus all of its abilities on punishing its former captor. Once per week, a familiar may use its special immortal knowledge and insight to help its master make an important decision. The aid it gives equates to that of a commune spell. Ecology. Now, this is the very bottom of the page here, so we're about to flip over from 41 to 42. Ecology, although in their immortal forms, familiars do not need sustenance, while on the prime material plane they need mid-sentence. What kind of edit is that? Because we are using every single bit of space we can really get. That's why. Okay? So, so while on the prime material plane, they need rest, food, and drink to survive, just like non-magical creatures. Familiars can speak, but rarely choose to communicate with anyone except their masters. They normally assist their masters in all manner of tasks, from magical experiments to epic quests. Their special abilities make them adept at spying and scouting enemy camps. Because of the harm a familiar's death inflicts on its master, wizards seldom use them as guards or warriors. Familiars make their homes wherever their masters live, and the two seldom stray far from each other. Now, we're going to get into the 5 individual descriptions. You can see below, basically pictured Well, frankly, 3 of them. So try to guess for yourself which ones are which. Aryth. Aryth have the most unassuming appearance of any familiar. These tiny humanoids, 1 foot tall, have bright green eyes and translucent skin the color of black pearl. The Aryth's long tail and delicate wings seem thin, almost to the point of invisibility. An Aryth can polymorph into either a spider monkey or a sparrow, per the spell Polymorph Self. In combat, the familiar attacks with its tail, which contains hundreds of tiny soporific stingers in its tip. Anyone struck by the tail suffers a 1d4 points of damage and must make a successful saving throw versus spell or fall asleep for 2d4 rounds. The amazingly perceptive Aryth can cast Detect Lie at will. In addition, it can use a Protection from Evil 10-foot radius spell 3 times per day. An Aryth never willingly serves a master not of good alignment. Bogan. The tiny Bogan has sharp humanoid features. Its skin and 4 petite wings bear the mottled blue-green hue of a dragonfly, while its short, scaly tail is either bright blue or green. Its eyes, large and blue, help make this creature remarkably attractive. In fact, many mortals have met their doom after becoming infatuated with, and then betrayed by, one of these beauties. A Bogan can polymorph into a garter snake and a macaw. In combat, it either lashes out with its tail that boasts a sharp knife edge along 2/3 of the length, or it bites with envenomed teeth. Anyone the Bogan bites must make a saving throw versus paralyzation or shake uncontrollably for 1d4 rounds, -2 penalty to attack. Interestingly, not a penalty to armor class. Bogans themselves are immune to poison. These cunning familiars can cast Charm Person 3 times per day. They will talk to anyone they feel they can manipulate or hurt, occasionally even allowing themselves to be bound to good aligned wizards in hopes of eventually bringing about their master's downfall. Interesting. Fylgar. Fylgars, the most attractive familiars, have large, brightly colored wings and rounded, childlike features framed by curly hair. Well, that'd be the one in the foreground, then. Again, these images are slightly more washed out than the one I'm holding in my hand. It's a shame. Continuing with the description. Their long, cat-like tails bear a coat of pastel, soft, feathery fur. Even in harsh conditions, they wear light, gauzy garments. Fylgars can polymorph themselves into either black cats or hawks. They have extremely quick reflexes, improving all their initiative rolls by +1, if you're, doing that kind of thing, and are extraordinarily agile flyers. When attacking with their long whip-like tails, natural form only, these familiars gain a +4 to attack rolls. So instead of Thaco's 17, it's more like 13. 3 times a day, Fylgars can cast Invisibility 10-foot radius, and they can use Detect Invisibility at will. They only willingly serve lawful masters. In fact, some have fallen deathly ill when forced to serve one of the chaotic alignment. Fylgars despair over the vicious acts of the Ulzaq and attempt to send such creatures back to their home plane whenever possible. Gretch. The lumpy grayish Gretch bears small pointed horns, oversized hands, and a barbed tail. Its short but powerful leathery wings, though functional, do not permit it to fly well. Gretches can polymorph at will into either ravens or giant rats. If not polymorphed, the creature attacks with its poisonous tail. Victims hit by the tail must make a saving throw versus poison. Failing means losing 1 point of dexterity per hit. They can regain lost dexterity at a rate of 1 point per turn, starting 1 turn after the loss of the last point. A victim whose dexterity drops to 3 falls unconscious and remains so until the ability score returns to at least 4, so, a turn, if they've not been struck. It's just 10 minutes. Remember, a turn is 10 minutes. The Gretch is immune to mind-affecting spells. Once a day, it may cast Slow on foes. So this one's immune to Charm and Sleep and Suggestion and Geas, probably. These familiars feel less choosy about the alignment of their masters than the other immortal familiars do. Although they prefer to serve one of neutral alignment, a Gretch will become bound to the master it thinks will make the fewest demands of it. Gretches enjoy practical jokes, so any wizard who forcibly binds one into service is well advised to keep alert, lest one of the familiar's jokes accidentally harms or kills the master. So, that'd be that gray one here in the background in the upper left. And it's got an impish grin, definitely. Yep. Ulzaq. By far the ugliest of the familiars, Ulzaks possess hideous, misshapen features, scaly yellow-brown skin, and gnarled horns sprouting from their tiny heads. Their vestigial leathery wings do not permit them to fly. Ulzaks perpetually cover themselves in mud and filth, as one of their main pastimes is diving into dirt, trash, and other forms of refuse. Lovely. Yeah, I would say the one pictured even has clumps of something falling off of it. Yeah. An Ulzaq can polymorph itself at will into a bat or frog. In normal form, the creature attacks with filthy talons and vicious fangs. Whatever the Ulzaq's form, its bite wounds drain 1 point of the victim's strength per hit, negated by a successful saving throw versus poison. Characters can regain lost strength at a rate of 1 point per turning, starting at the turn after the loss of the last point. A victim whose strength drops to 3 falls unconscious and cannot be awakened until their ability score raises to 4. If you're playing with encumbrance, keep that in mind as well. Although in basic Dungeons & Dragons, really your encumbrance is not a function of strength. I know it's weird. But in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons it is. So, these familiars are immune to electrical attacks. Once per day, an Ulzaq can cause confusion per the spell Confusion. That'd be another spell it's immune to. Petty and venal creatures, Ulzaks wallow in the misery of others. Many search out weak masters who often fall prey to their manipulation and end up doing the familiar's sinister bidding. Ulzaks love to torture or plague a target for weeks before causing this victim's disgrace and violent death. Ulzaks hate Fylgars as much as Fylgars detest them, and Ulzaq attacks this enemy on sight, taking the time to torture the Fylgar. If possible, the vicious creatures especially like to pluck the feathers from the wings of the Fylgar captive. In general, they destroy the beauty in anything they see. And that completes page 42 and the familiar section. Interesting, right? I certainly can see them as plot devices very easily. And maybe you would even want to give one to a party member as a plot device, right? It serves an immortal and is there for a reason. And suddenly its reason is something you're trying to introduce to the party. Now, that's a bit railroady, but it's also an option, right? And maybe, like we had here earlier with the Aryth, right? Maybe it's presenting itself because, it thinks that the person it's presenting to wants to do the things that it presents, right? Or maybe it's like the Gretch, and it thinks, it's not going to ask me to do anything, right? It just wants an easy life, and it thinks the party's going to give it an easy life. But it'll still have a reason for being, and that's still going to be there. And that can be something you can uncover and explore. I feel like we're going to leave it on the subject here. So I'm afraid it's going to be a bit of a short video today. But thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate you being here. And, if you like what I give you, please feel free to hit that like button. It's no cost to you and will benefit me. I don't get paid, but it's nice to see people hit that like button because it feels good. I'll be honest. It's also nice to have your comments. I appreciate you and you being here. And it's nice to participate with you. But please, do so only if you want to. Um, there's no pressure. But it's good for me to say this every now and again. This is a shorter video, so if you're not subscribed and you like the videos and you've watched a few, maybe you want to subscribe because we're doing this kind of content nowadays. We're going to be doing these videos for a fair while. As much as I might be playing games still in video games, I generally don't make a whole lot of videos about them except on odd one-offs. And maybe I'm cooking them one up. I don't know. But you all have a great day. Goodbye.